Carlton versus West Coast was abnormal for the modern AFL in many respects. Carlton's opponents were traffic cones for a half. Charlie Curnow tore up the playing field kicking 10. Carlton were up 57 at quarter time, and then the footy gods dampened the mood by bogging the Blues down with injuries. Whilst that is a source of opportunity for many on the fringe, it also can be alarming, especially when top 8 spots are up for grabs at the pointy end of the season, and you're amongst that logjam. Today's analysis features one of those injury victims who was electric in a quarter and a half before hamstring got in the way of what probably was going to be certain Brownlow votes. Sam Walsh. Games like this where your team is already injury hit can be seen as a trap game, but Sam Walsh's dominance in the middle led a strong start and ensured there was zero doubt for a Carlton victory, and thus a smooth sailing day at the office. Walsh's 34% time on ground was highly impactful, accumulating 14 touches, 6 of those contested, going at 100% efficiency. He kicked a goal, he had 3 tackles, 4 clearances, 4 inside 50s, 181 metres gained, 3 goal assists, and a colossal 9 score involvements, which served to be calamitous for the visitors. Let's take a look at this performance, which was a symbol for his play in the last month. Sam Walsh said recently in an interview with Kaltumi that his kicking and ground balls is where he's been restricted since returning from surgery. The transformation in Sam Walsh's game in this last month has correlated with those 2 elements of his game lifting. And this has been welcoming because with players out, it's important you have players that can reshape themselves to fit the needs of the team. And Sam Walsh, who is roughly known for his outside game dominance through his running, reshaped himself to fit team needs through his more contested play and disposal. This versatility was shown through where he sat at centre bounces, rotating from more defensive positions to attacking positions where he could break away. This is one where he's on the attacking side of the stoppage, and JSOS drawing his direct matchup, having taken it out of the ruck, means Walsh can be the link to get it to a player who knows his way around the goals, at least on this occasion. This is one where he starts on the side of the stoppage, where he can wrap around more proactively and hold width, creating a bit of overlap with the sweeper. And this is one where he starts on the attacking side, but unlike the previous example where he holds position, this time he runs towards the defensive side where those halfback flankers can run off. He does this movement on a couple of occasions, and we will talk about his incredible class on the weekend in just a bit. Don't think I just brushed over that. His improvement was also displayed by the constant tendency for players to feed him the ball, both from ball ups and general play. From stoppages, Walshy was the focal point and almost the framework of how Carlton attacked stoppages, probably for the reason that he was tearing up the competition, or when they planned things pre-game, they knew he would. Walshy was the one usually the most proactive and on the move, signalling a want for the footy, which also promoted movement from our other midfielders. Walshy sends oppositions on the back foot for the damage he does and the attention he grabs. So simultaneously you're placing your own midfielders on the front foot. Like this Jack Silvani example. Walsh goes left, he's still on for the handball, but he has still displaced his opponent enough for Silvani to capitalise and stream into an open goal. From open play, it's also obvious what they were doing. You can see on this example, TDK feeds Walshy off the free kick, and it's a pretty good kick, had it not been for Motlop cutting off Charlie's space to lead into. Here, it's similar. TDK takes a mark here, and Impulse says, give it to Walsh. You'll notice the Eagles weren't very interested in monitoring Sam Walsh, rather opting to play with fire. That's actually how Sam Walsh kicked his goal, because of that inadequacy. Dom Sheed is his assignment, and when the free is called, he parts from Sam Walsh, presumably to help clog the most dangerous part of the 50. But we don't have any representation in the forward 50 and the goal square is wide open. So while on one hand, it's not really giving us any obvious passing options because of what they're trying to do, they're still not resolving the problem of leaving the goal square wide open. And so what they're trying to do is completely useless. And look, I think we've got to pay a bit of credit to us for getting up the ground and keeping the 50 open, and also to Lewis Young for actually not running towards the goal square and keeping that wide open as well. If we return to a previous example, he did this on a couple of occasions where the combination of his wizardry and the presence of his teammates gravitated opponents away from Walshy. The seas parted and that running power and improved kicking could be utilised. And the way in which he broke clear of Eagles players was also damaging for the fact that sometimes there was a ratio of 3 to 4 players to the 1 in Walsh, and he still broke free to clear a teammate and enable a less under duress forward 50 entry. This example I love where Walshy nabs it with one hand, sidesteps and then pushes forward to release Paddy Dow. Then followed up and took it with the left, fended off a player, drawing a free. And then the kick is immaculate. So there's one example of those two features of his game feeding a positive outcome. And Carlton would have been licking their lips pre-game at Charlie Curnow's potential to kick a big bag. McGovern out already and Barras also were laid out meant Charlie's assignments were second-year players Brady Huff and Rhett Bazzo, both who were absolutely rinsed, and eventually that matchup had to be changed for Oscar Allen. But my point is, Walshy manufacturing high-quality entries through his class meant the conversion was so high because of that one single matchup, or for the Eagles' inexperience in the backline entirely. And that was why Walshy's impact was so great for the minimal time he was on field. To quantify, Carlton kicked 15 goals from clearances, which led to the highest output from that area by any team this season. Walshy clearly being one of the reasons for us in even getting close to that total. Then obviously his running is the number one strength in his game. And two-way running for this team is the backbone of our success in recent weeks. Sam Walsh was pretty strong at contributing to positive link-up chains that changed direction in close to help desert us from pressurized situations and allowed us to springboard into an attack, which at times was far too easy to achieve. On this example, you can see how he does this effectively and then runs a length of the field to place himself in a perfect position to get a handball receive, even if he did get ignored. You can see on this example, Walshy puts in the hard yards to make an option. This is actually well done by the Eagles because their numbers reacted to ours getting across, they rolled over quickly, and they got a good win in getting a dead ball because of all that territory they lacked in the first half. But it's the positioning for me. A bit tough for Akers to do anything but a loopy handball. But if the handball is flatter, Sam Walsh has more time, and he has placed himself well to have a few passing options, or he can retreat into space with footy in hand, as opposed to if he went this side, which isn't as beneficial for spacing and a clear exit. He also did well to anticipate the direction this back 50 exit would take, running to a spot where it's promoting a safer kick that at worst would be a throw-in, but at best helps us exit, and that's the outcome that Walshy achieves. I mean, he was just that on fire. Ultimately, his number one strength was actually his number one weakness, as seemingly the only thing that could stop Sam Walsh was himself. But nevertheless, it was fun while it lasted. When Sam Walsh is missing, we lose a fair bit, and especially with a depleted midfield like we had for the second half, he was sorely missed. You may be wondering how, given we maintained our superiority in the clearance count. Well, we were getting clearances, but entering the 50, they weren't consistently effective as first half clearances were. Our clearances lost a bit of punch because no longer did we have that focal point that gave us direction to help feed players on the outside and equally be on the outside, receiving that handball. Instead, things were more condensed because Players like Walsh weren't on the field to provide spread, and the tap work was more directed to contests rather than to the advantage of a player. TDK on the weekend had a bucket load of clearances himself, and part of the reason for that can be attributed to him taking the ball out of the ruck because there wasn't a player being assertive or putting themselves on a pedestal. I talked before about Walshy giving other players confidence through removing their burden and placing us on the front foot. As seen by us taking a step back and being more in our shell in the second half, that effect can be felt. In open play, sometimes we missed that work rate of Sam Walsh to cover large distances. Like this example, where we could have done with a player like Walsh to support this chain and progress the ball a bit further or change direction another way to ensure the ball doesn't drop shorter or there is an intercept involved. There's another example of that here, which takes the same effect. You hit the target, a player like Walsh is also probably following up to get the handball receive. It's nothing personal on Paddy Dow. I actually think he had a really solid game. Definitely didn't shy away, and his kicking looked really good at times. The more reps you get into a player like that, who's lacked continuity, things will start to come together. But he's not of much use here, going at a pretty pedestrian pace, not presenting as an option. Two things on a common basis Walsh shows with urgency. Here's another example of the urgency thing I'm talking about, which you won't commonly see with Walshy. I'll use Paddy Dow again. Here, West Coast have it in the centre, and they weren't really playing attractive footy, so you had a little bit more time to defensively track back because the Eagles were going the long way round and needing a bit extra to get it forward. But if we pause here, you'll see Jamie Cripps is bursting to get inside 50 as the space opens up when our number has to come forward. A better team is utilising this 4-on-3 well. Sard is doing well to zone up and tease the Eagles in going wide. The Eagles make a couple of mistakes as Bazzo knocks it wider and Elijah Hewitt doesn't hold position. So whilst it's the right option to pass it to him, the execution is poor because life is made difficult. So because they couldn't manipulate the space, we've actually been able to cover 3 plays with only 2 of ours. But a better team doesn't make a meal of this. I'll let another example of this run. What I'm saying is players like Walsh with elite running power and endurance are probably not allowing this opportunity to even slightly open up. Probably because Walshy won't allow his opponents to widen the gap. While we aren't punished here, a team like Collingwood next week will. Or even this example, Dow starts here. The Eagles apply a switch. When the ball enters the 50, our midfielders line the 50-metre arc. When we find a bit of room with this sweeping hand pass, you'd like a player to be helping run the ball up with all this space as opposed to executing a dump kick. A problem that players like Walsh could mend. Here's another example where I will use Dow again. You can see him over here, whilst a player like Sam Walsh is probably getting into a position like over here where Cunners is, and then is probably in the fray somewhere around here, potentially to get a handball receive. Now, some of this comes down to fatigue, which I get. The Carlton interchange bench was like an emergency room, just problems everywhere with no immediate resolution in sight. Some of these players, especially the mids, would have been knackered. The lack of movement at stoppages would have been energy preservation more than anything, and covering the ground would have been done with the same thing in mind. That said, Walshy is one of the top elite runners for a reason. Usually, he's running out games when others are puffed out and still making that impact. And so that's just another thing we're missing. So there you go. Sam Walsh is a ball magnet, or should I say he's magnetized to the ball. He hunts the footy like there's no tomorrow. The reason he has such a high impact is simply because usually he wants it more than anyone else. His teammates feed into that. And his football nous is so high off the charts that he knows the places to be where he can maximize that impact greatly with and without the ball. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to chuck a like on it and subscribe if you want to track the Carlton content for the rest of the year. And don't be afraid to have a discussion in the comments or share it around so that discussion can exponentially grow. Thanks again, and bye for now.